Welcome back to Mark My Words Football Podcast with Rob.
And Scott.
And we are here once again to break down the action from Week 10 and gear up for an exciting NFL Week 11. The season is heating up and every game counts as teams jostle for playoff positioning. We've got thrilling games to talk about, both in Week 10 and in Week 11. So without further ado, let's get right into it, starting off with a game between the Buffalo Bills and the Indianapolis Colts, in which the Bills prevailed by a score of 30-20. And what were your thoughts from this game?
Well, the Bills could have won by more than this score indicates. I mean, they were up by more, and a garbage time touchdown really brought this even closer. But it seemed like the Colts honestly gave this one away. Like, if Flacco hadn't thrown as many picks as he did, if they had a more solid quarterback, this game could have been very, very close, but it wasn't.
Yes, absolutely. And this is a game that I picked the Colts to win going into it because I thought the Bills possibly could overlook the Colts in anticipation for the Chiefs the week after. And it almost seemed like they actually did for a little while in this game. They started out pretty hot, but then towards the second half, they started to slow down a little bit. And it really looked like they were trying to almost hand the game over to the Colts, but the Colts just handed it right back to them. And that being said, I don't think the Bills played a terrible game in this one. I think they did what they needed to do to get the win. And the fact that they were still able to score 30 points and get over 400 yards for the game while having what we would probably consider an off week of sorts is very impressive.
Yeah, I would agree. And I guess you have to consider that pick six into it as well a little bit, but... And we can even use that point a little bit when we're talking about a team like Kansas City, where you say, like, oh, they're not getting that offensive output, but the defense is doing good. But they're still not getting the scoring from even the defense. So,
yeah,
so it depends on how you want to look at that.
Oh, I think good teams find a way to win no matter what. And sometimes that it takes your defense having a play like that, and sometimes it takes a blocked field goal, like in the case of the Chiefs. But I don't think either of these games we take that away from them. It just is a credit to your good players making great plays like that. And in a game where we saw Josh Allen throw for 0 touchdowns and 2 picks, like if I told you that going into the game, I think you'd probably say, wow, this is probably going to be a Colts win here, or at least closer than it was. Because even though the score was only 10 points, it honestly felt like more like the Bills were really dominating this because they really controlled the ball. They controlled the time of possession and things of that nature. And the Colts kind of scoring, like you said, the garbage time touchdown at the end. And the Bills really they actually kind of won this game quite handily, more than the scoreboard would indicate.
Yeah, and their defense just looked incredible. I think that is going back to the Seattle game as well, where the defense has looked really good in some ways. I mean, I think we can talk about that Russian defense again, like I brought up last week. Was a problem. They couldn't stop Jonathan Taylor at all in the first half, but adjusted well in the second half.
Yes, and for this game, I think the Bills kind of they chose their poison with the Colts because they knew that the Colts were going to rely on Taylor for the run game, and the Bills, I think to their credit, they said like, yeah, we'll let you do that. We're just not going to let you get any chunk plays. We're not going to, we're really going to clamp down on this pass game, and they did that with forcing a lot of turnovers from Flacco and getting good pressure on him throughout the game. I think the Bills really played the smart game here, saying that you can't run on us enough to be able to outscore our offense. And so I think they did get run on, and that is a concern, but I don't think it's as big of a concern when talking about this game in particular.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how that strategy plays out. Like I said last week, if they end up facing like Baltimore getting the playoffs, or like they play Kansas City next week, and what if they face them in the playoffs? And they're a team that's really been predicated on a good rushing offense being able to help handle the game for them too.
Absolutely. It's definitely something they're going to have to bolster. And I think it helps when you can narrow it down because, like I said before, the Bills don't have like that many issues with their team. And to be like, okay, this is our one, kind of big problem here is our run defense. I think that really kind of helps you because like, okay, this is something we can just focus on to our utmost. We can really narrow in on this, and they're definitely going to be tested against a good Chiefs run game next week. But I think they definitely, even with that weakness, they still are. It's going to be a great game, going to be a shootout. And this win against the Colts just further solidifies the Bills as heavyweights for me, not falling for that cheap loss that sometimes we see teams fall for. So good job for me, I think that I'm really impressed by this win.
All right.
And from there, we're going to go on to the NFL's Clown of the Week for Week 10.
Everybody loves a good clown, and now it's time to meet the NFL's Clown of the Week for this week.
And this week's Clown of the Week in the NFL is the New York Jets franchise. Yep, let's bring them back another time this year, the Circus of the Week. That is a new thing, and the Jets have certainly earned this one. Well, we got lots of stats for you here. So, the Jets' record through 10 games the last 3 years with Zach Wilson, 6-4, 4-6. This year with Aaron Rodgers, 3-7. That doesn't seem much better than when they had Zach Wilson, does it? Some more. From 2021 to 2023, Zach Wilson-era Jets averaged 176 points and 2,103 passing yards for the first 10 games of the season. The 2024 Jets have scored 177 points and thrown for 2,117 yards for the first 10 games. That doesn't seem much different than when you had Zach Wilson either, does it? No, not at all. And now this team has just absolutely blown it this week, losing 31-6 against the Cardinals. Like, just an absolute stinker. It looks like this team isn't even trying. This team is absolutely lost. Like, can you fire an interim coach? I don't know. If you could, you should do that. This team sucks. Like, he cannot inspire his players at all. There's no bump at all. Kyler Murray completed 22 of 24 passes for 266 yards, including each of his last 17 passes. Per Next Gen Stats, the odds of Murray completing each of his last 17 passes based on the probability of each attempt is 1 in 408. Jets, like, what is going on? If you watch this game, you can tell this team just does not care. It does not care anymore. It's like, shame on you, Woody Johnson, for what you've allowed this team to become. And Joe Douglas, shame on you too for building this, for thinking this was going to actually work. And Aaron Rodgers, you play a big part into this too, for not being able to just muster anything on offense. Not over 200 passing yards for Rodgers each of the last 2 weeks. This team has not scored 30 points this season. You know who has? The Carolina Panthers. What is going on here? This is an absolute circus here in New York Jets. New York Jets, you're the clown of the week.
Here we go into the game picks for Week 11. We're starting off with an elite division battle between what was once the NFC least, it's now the NFC East. Two great opponents, the Commanders and the Eagles. Who takes it?
I'm not sure how great these opponents may be, but I will be taking the Washington Commanders.
And I agree with both points. I also will take the Commanders.
So why would you say that you agree?
Well, despite both teams having 7 wins each and only having 5 losses combined, I think one team clearly is, above the other, and I do think the Commanders are a much better team. And I mean, you look at it, you're starting a rookie quarterback, you're on a brand new coach, and you have beaten really good quality opponents. And maybe not the strongest schedule, but I mean, you've had some solid wins this year, like destroying teams that you should be destroying, and then edging out teams that are pretty good, like the Bengals and the Cardinals. You really put it on them, and the Steelers. One could say you almost should have won that game as well. Very close game against Pittsburgh. Whereas the Eagles, yes, they've had some good wins, but they are the more talented team. But I just do not trust their coaching staff at all, and it seems like we're a Jalen Hurts turnover game away from the whole Eagles season collapsing.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you about the Eagles. I did not like them coming into this season, and I'm honestly kind of surprised that they have the record they have. Even looking back on some of their games, I felt like they really didn't deserve to win that New Orleans game, and they've kind of been a merchant of some worse wins, too. They didn't even beat Jacksonville that good. They kind of beat up on Dallas, but I don't think they're that good of a team. I don't think of them as a true contender. And Washington, for that respect, I think they're a little bit better of a team, but I'm not even 100% sold on Washington, so I want to see a little bit more sample size on them. And maybe that's me just kind of just hedging my bets a little bit, but I'm just not 100% sold on Washington yet, but I do like them better in this game.
Yes, I think that is clear. I just cannot put my trust in the Eagles right now. And I do think the Commanders are good. I think the Commanders are verifiably a good team. I'm not sure I can say that confidently about the Eagles, despite their record.
Yeah.
And we go on from one divisional battle to another, this time the NFC North, a battle between the Green Bay Packers fresh off a bye and the Chicago Bears fresh off firing their offensive coordinator. And who do you think gets the win this time?
I have the Packers winning this one.
And I will as well.
Yeah, firing Shane Waldron, I don't know if it's going to make too much of a difference yet. Long term, we're hoping it will, but I do not think we'll see the fruits of that this week.
Yes, yeah, we often talk about the interim head coach bump. I don't think we get the same exact results from a coordinator being fired. But Caleb Williams over the last 3 games has looked absolutely atrocious. And last week, especially getting outplayed by Drake May and a terrible Patriots offense. I mean, just making Drake May look like he should have been the pick over Williams in that game. Whereas the Packers, they've been playing quite well this year on offense. I think consistently throughout the year, they have looked really good on offense. Even against the Lions, despite only scoring 14 points, I think it was mainly the sloppiness that really did them in with the penalties and the turnovers. And you'd like to think that over a bye week, that's the sort of thing that you can weed out of your game. Those are correctable mistakes. So I do like the Packers here. I think they're the better coach team and the more talented team.
Yeah, I think this should be a big win for the Packers.
Absolutely. And the Bears, it's a must win for the Bears. So that scares me a little bit because they are more desperate. But I can't really put my trust in them at all with how Caleb Williams has been playing.
Right.
And from there, we go on to a game between the Jacksonville Jaguars taking on the Detroit Lions. Lions prevailing in a tumultuous win last week. Do you think they steady the ship with another win?
I think they do.
And I do as well.
I think they said they're favored by 14 points. That's insane.
Absolutely insane. And the Lions, it really seems like much like the Chiefs, are they ever going to lose? I mean, you have a game where Goff throws 5 interceptions and you still win that game. It's just absolutely insane. If you can't lose in that context, how are you ever going to lose? And so the Jaguars, it's kind of the opposite. You face the Vikings and Sam Darnold looking absolutely terrible, and you're only able to garner 7 points at home. So these two teams are just complete different sides of the NFL spectrum right now.
Yeah, Lions all the way.
All the way. And speaking of the Vikings, they this week are taking on the Tennessee Titans. 7-2 are the Vikings, 2-7 are the Titans. Do you think the gap between these two teams narrows this week?
I do not, since I have the Vikings winning this one.
And I also will have the Vikings.
Yeah, so I think in a week where there's some massive AFC opponents, when you think of Bills, Chiefs, and the Steelers and Ravens, and even Chargers and Bengals in the NFC, some of the big guys are just playing some of the worst. Just Detroit playing Jacksonville and then Minnesota playing the Titans.
Yes, absolutely. And like I said, in the last game, the Lions, can they steady the ship with another win? Because even though they looked really bad, they were still able to win. And I think the same is true with the Vikings. Didn't look great at all against Jacksonville, but still able to get the win. So, and now facing an absolute cupcake in the Titans. Definitely, even though I'm not as high on the Vikings as maybe some people are, I think they're definitely a good team capable of beating the Titans.
Yeah, I mean, prove you're good. Prove you're good.
Absolutely. We wanted to blow out from them last week. I think I wanted even more now this week.
Right. Yes, especially after the 2 losses before.
Definitely. And then we have a game between the Las Vegas Raiders and the Miami Dolphins. Dolphins showing some signs of life. Do you think they keep their season alive with another win here?
Yes, I do.
And I will have to agree.
Yeah. The Dolphins are able to pull it off on Monday Night Football just to keep that little slimmer hope alive. And in the AFC playoff race, I think that they may be able to do that for a little while longer.
Yes, I would have to agree with that. And the Dolphins, kind of a weird spot they find themselves in, because I think going into the year, we weren't very high on them, and they really didn't look all that good with Tua in there. But when Tua got out, they looked just absolutely terrible. And then we all kind of had this, well, if Tua comes back, then they might be able to go on a run. But when he was there, they didn't even look good. But since he's gotten back, they've looked a lot better. and they were very close to beating the Bills and being in a 4-5 spot right now. So I think the Dolphins definitely, their season is not over, and I hope to see them roll here against the Raiders, who are just bottom feeder verifiably, of course.
Yes.
And from there, we go on to a game between the Los Angeles Rams and the Patriots. Rams being victims of the Dolphins' momentum last week. Do you think they get back on track here?
I do have the Rams winning this one.
And I will also have the Rams.
Yeah, Patriots, though, getting a couple of sneaky wins recently, beating both the Bears and the Jets, but not changing our minds too much on them.
No, I don't. They're definitely. I think what this has proved more than anything is that Drake May. I think he's. I'm not going to say he's the greatest quarterback ever. His stats are obviously not very good, but the fact that he's able to get this really undertalented team with a terrible offensive line, get them over the hump in some of these games, I think that has to count for something. So I think he's got good poise in there, and he's kind of has that winner's mentality. But the Rams are much more desperate than the Patriots are at this point, and the Patriots, their offensive line is just too terrible against that Rams pass rush.
Yeah, and I think going back to Drake May, I think he's shown even more poise than Jacoby Brissett did, and I think we can both agree that Jacoby Brissett is a competent NFL quarterback. Like, he's not garbage.
Yes, but he certainly looked like garbage behind that offensive line.
Right, and so I think it makes it even more impressive that Drake May doesn't look like a turd out there. Like, he looks fine sometimes. Like, even though this team is not good, like, he looks fine.
Yes, absolutely. I'm excited to see how he'll grow as hopefully the Patriots roster gets better. We'll see who ends up being the quarterback from this class, because it certainly looks like Caleb Williams is not the guy. I mean, it's still early, but this Jaden Daniels has been looking pretty good. Bo Nix has looked solid enough. I mean, maybe Drake May was a guy nobody's talking about. Maybe it ends up being him.
Yeah, I always liked Drake May coming out of that class.
Yeah, I mean, is he? Are you telling me he's instilling fear in the heart of you, a Bills fan?
Pretty
the
far
Patriots
from that
are going to come up and steal that division from you next year?
I don't think next year.
Well, maybe they'll surprise you.
Maybe they can make the games competitive once in a while.
Yeah. I mean, you have to add some tension to that division. I mean,
doesn't seem to be any this year.
Yeah, there's not much going on in it. All right, well, we'll move on from that matchup into a matchup between two just so good teams here. 2-7 Browns taking on the 3-7 Saints. Whew! Awesome game. Who do you think is going to win?
I'll have the Browns winning this one.
And I'm going to go with the Saints here.
And just talking about Browns with the Saints. Did you see the Saints interim coach's interview after the game last week? Where he just decides he has to mention that he clogged the toilet that morning. Like, I was just like in shock that this guy in his post-game interview just he feels the need to tell everybody he clogged the toilet that morning, and that's how his day started. Oh, that's how my day was going, and I thought it was going to continue like that, but we got the win.
You gotta love it. It's something about these quirky coaches. Like, sometimes it works in the case of like Dan Campbell, but I feel like we're all waiting for that one guy to just fall flat on his face. But I feel like it's actually worked. Like, you think about Mike McDaniels, he's been a pretty good coach. He's a weird, quirky guy. Nick Sirianni, for all his faults, he's been heading a winning team. Dan Campbell. I mean, I feel like the quirky guys, there's something about him that kind of works. I don't know.
Yeah, this guy, he's got the spotlight right now, but I highly doubt he's going to stick around as a head coach much longer.
Hey, who knows? If he can do what he did last week, starting his day clogging the toilet, just imagine what he can do when he doesn't clog it to start the day.
Absolutely true.
Force to be reckoned with right there. But I do think they stymie a Jameis Winston revenge game here against the Browns. They did show some signs of life against the Falcons. I do think that continues.
All right.
And then we get to the marquee matchup of the week, especially for us. The Ravens against the Steelers. And who do you think wins this one?
I'll have the Ravens winning this one.
And I'm going to take the Steelers.
Yeah, I think no surprise on either front here.
Yeah.
And these games have been historically close. And awesome. I think even closer than they normally have to be. So I think it's time to bring out our gold standard here. are one of the best things from last year. Never fails. Mark my words. Ravens win double-digit points. Ravens win by at least 10 this week.
Oh, gosh. No, you know what? I don't want to be petty. And I don't want to... So you say double digits, right? 10?
Yep.
Now, I'm not a petty person, okay? But mark my words, the Pittsburgh Steelers will win by 11-plus points in this game.
All right, so dueling, mark my words. Like we always seem to do this with the Steelers. We always have at least one dueling one per year. Like it's just kind of like a fact, like just a tradition now. You just have to.
Absolutely, but while these games have been close and they've been great, and they're always always physical, they're always close. Lamar Jackson has not played well against the Steelers. The last 4 games, he's 1-3 against Mike Tomlin and the Steelers, and having a passer rating of 66 in those 4 games on average, throwing for only 4 touchdowns and 10 interceptions, or 4 total touchdowns and 10 interceptions in the last 4 games. So Lamar Jackson clearly struggles against the Steelers. I think this year the Steelers are better than they've been in the last 3 years, probably even 4 years. So, yeah,
I would
Steelers
agree.
all the way. All the way, but this is definitely going to be... my eyes are going to be glued to this one. I'm sure yours will be as well.
Yes, it's some really fun AFC matchups this week.
Yes, and another one that I'm interested in because I think it's the last chance for the New York Jets who take on the Indianapolis Colts. Do you think the Jets are able to respond?
Yes, I do.
And, wow. Man, I do as well. Got burned last week, but I don't know.
As much as I've liked Anthony Richardson, that scares me a little.
Very much so.
That the
And
Colts
I
are
think
going back
Shane's
to.
taken- like, he had it right. Like, Joe Flacco still gives you the best chance to win, even though he hasn't been playing great.
It's a really tough place because, in a way, you have to develop Richardson into your franchise quarterback because Flacco. I don't fault him for what he did because Flacco was not winning them games, so it's like, all right, let's go back to the other guy then.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I see that because, like, okay, we're playing Flacco because he gives us the best chance to win. But then when he's not winning and he's not playing well, it's like, well, that's the only incentive we had was that he gives us the best chance to win. So, I mean, why not go back to the guy who is our future? But I still think that Flacco gave him the best chance to win. And I think that once they decided to start Richardson, their chances of winning this game greatly lessened because he's been a really just a weird he's not had a single like normal game and isn't like his stat lines look something like 9 for 20 with like 250 yards somehow. It's just like the weirdest stat lines you'll ever see. But he's very wild quarterback, very raw, and against the Jets, who season is on the line right here. If you lose this, it's completely over. It's really difficult. I don't even know why I'm picking the Jets here. I'm just doing it. It's just kind of a, well, this is it. If this is the last time I pick you. If you lose, I'm never picking you again. And I don't know. I'm talking myself almost into picking the Colts here. So I can't. I got to move on before I change that. All right, so next game here, we got the Atlanta Falcons taking on the Denver Broncos. So Falcons falling to the Saints last week. Broncos narrowly losing to the Chiefs. Who do you think gets back on track?
Oh, the Falcons winning this one?
I will as well, but really not trusting it at all.
I feel like I trust this one pretty well because I'm pretty confident that Denver is not that good a team. And I think Atlanta is at least a somewhat good team.
Yes, I would agree with that, but Falcons just they're good, but at the same time, it seems like things aren't really clicking there. Like I feel like they should be better than they are, and I think they've shown like flashes that they could be a really good team, but they just haven't been able to put it all together yet.
Yeah, like they always leave you wanting just a little bit more. Like they've been really good at winning these end of game situations. Like they're not handily winning games. Really, the only one I guess they handily won would probably be against Tampa Bay a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, their offense has played great against Tampa Bay in the 2 games they've had, and it's mainly their issue overall has mainly been the defense this year. And of course, the Broncos don't have a great offense to take advantage of that. It's the main reason why I'm taking them to win. But the Broncos they're pretty solid. You pretty much know what you're going to get from them every week. So, which is the opposite of the Falcons. So, I think this game could go either way. I don't think it's going to be. I think if the Broncos win, it'll be close. But if the Falcons win, it should be a handle. I like a handy win.
All right.
And there we go to another divisional battle here between the Seahawks and the 49ers. Who do you think comes out on top?
I'm picking the 49ers in this one.
And I will have to agree.
Yeah, 49ers have been a little disappointing this year. They've had their share of injuries. Seahawks, I think, have had some disappointments as well. Like, even with as much as they've done, I think they just have not lived up to standard.
Yeah, I agree. And Seahawks kind of similar to the Falcons. I think they started off obviously very good, 3-0, and then have gone 1-5 since. Really just kind of been frustrating to see that because I thought this defense was going to be very good, and they really have disappointed thus far. Geno has been playing good, but at the same time, he's been also a little bit haphazard with the ball. And so the Seahawks, I think if they could put things together, they could be a pretty good team that could definitely, still win this very winnable division. But I do think the Niners are just too talented.
Yeah.
And then you got on the game of the week on Sunday, the Kansas City Chiefs and the Buffalo Bills. Always a classic. Who do you think takes this one?
I'll have the Chiefs winning this one.
And I will as well.
Yeah. I think there's a couple of reasons for me of this. The Bills have some injuries this week. I think they've already announced there's a couple of guys that aren't going to play. And I think these teams are very comparable. And I'll take the team that just always seems to find the slight edge. That always seems to come out on top no matter what. Like, especially in those close matchups. I'll take that team.
Yes, I agree. And I think the Bills have been playing some good football lately. But I do think the Chiefs are kind of on that next tier, just separating themselves from the pack as the best team in the NFL, I think, with the Lions. And, yeah, like you said, just every game is close, but they've, won all of them. They haven't lost, I think, since to that game against the Raiders from last year. And so, I mean, they're, because obviously they won the Super Bowl as well. So, yeah, Chiefs win in this one, but it's definitely going to be a close one. And, even the slightest mistake, I think the Bills have to take advantage of it. There's very little room for error, I think. And so if the Bills can take care of the football, I think they could prevail. But I think we're seeing the last few weeks, Allen's luck with the turnovers has kind of turned the other way. And so I just think this is the moment for the Chiefs to go up to 10-0.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people are going to want to predict a shootout because how good historically these teams' offenses would be. I would not predict that. I would take the under for this game.
Yes. Defensive battle.
Yeah.
And from there we go on to a game between the Cincinnati Bengals and the Los Angeles Chargers. Chargers find themselves 6-3. Do you think they improve to 7-3?
I do not. I'll have the Bengals winning this one.
And I will as well. I'll take the Bengals.
We have a lot of similar picks this week.
Yeah, I know.
I thought we'd go a little awry on a couple of these, but we're just on the same page, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. I love the Chargers. I predict them to make the playoffs to start the year. But this is a game I just think that the Bengals, they pretty much roll offensively in every game, and I don't know that the Chargers have the offensive power to go toe to toe with the Bengals. Even though Herbert's been playing better, I just don't think that they have that manpower to compete with the Bengals' high-powered offense.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. That I think that the Bengals offense is going to do what it's done, and the Chargers just won't be able to quite keep up. That the Bengals defense will probably finally be able to do just enough, as they haven't been able to do almost ever this year. It's really been their downfall. It's been very difficult. They could probably had at least one win versus the Ravens. Probably coulda or shoulda took the Commanders, and maybe made that Eagles game closer too. But here they are.
Yes, but their schedule is fairly winnable. I mean, obviously they have the divisional games. They could easily find themselves in the playoffs. And, yeah, I agree with everything you said there. I think they are better than the record indicates.
Yeah.
And to close out the week, we have a battle between the two Texas teams, the Texans and the Cowboys. Who do you think wins?
All the Texans in this one.
And I also will have the Texans.
Yeah, Dallas is cooked. They're absolutely done. Prescott out for the year. Even with Prescott, they looked bad. Houston, not looking great. Coming off a week where they absolutely blew it to the Lions. But they should win.
Yeah, absolutely. I really like this week to be a get back comeback week for the Texans. Their offensive line is awful. C.J. Stroud has been playing some uninspiring football, but the Cowboys are down the can. And I don't know if we've kind of already seen too much of how bad they looked with Prescott to save McCarthy, because I thought, okay, maybe when Prescott got hurt out for the year, maybe that saves McCarthy for the season. What do you think? Do you think that we already kind of saw too much of when Prescott was healthy, that his job was kind of already over?
Yeah, and I think just the whole that they just built in general is like, you got to do something. You got to do something big. I mean, this even plays back into the last year's playoff loss to Green Bay. Like, people were calling for heads then, and like even prior to that, like what McCarthy had done, I think he had already made his bed. That like he needed to finally do something big, and it fell even shorter than before.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so as well. And I do like Mike McCarthy. I don't think he's the problem in Dallas. I think it's a multitude of things. I don't think he's been the solution. But, the circus in Dallas continues, as you pointed out last week. I think that's a very accurate analogy there. I think the Cowboys dropped to 3-7 here.
Yeah.
And from there, we're going to go and give you our against the spread picks. So last week, I went 2-0 with the Bengals and Steelers. Scott went 1-1 with the Vikings, giving him good points there, and the Falcons falling short. That makes us 7-3 for me on the year, 5-5 for Scott, and looking to narrow the gap. Scott, what do you have for this week?
This week, I'm going to take the Commanders plus 3.5 versus Philadelphia. And as we know, I did pick the Commanders to win outright, as did Rob, so I definitely like them getting a 3.5 point spread. Even if they were to lose, I think that the Eagles really are not going to blow them out, so certainly 3.5 is a great number for me.
Yes, love that one. Absolutely love that one. I was almost going to go with that, but then I saw that the 7-2 Steelers were underdogs at home, and I was insulted by that line. I know the Steelers are going to be insulted by that line, and I have done quite well picking the Steelers. I think I picked them almost every week this year, and maybe I just keep picking the Steelers every week against the spread. Steelers +3 all the way. Give me a break.
Alrighty. And following that, why don't we transition over to Rob's fantasy starts and sits of the week. So, Rob, why don't you tell the folks how you did last week and what you got cooking for this week?
All right, so last week we had, some hits, some misses. So for our starts, I told you to start quarterback Russell Wilson, and you would be well served to do that, as he was the 9th best fantasy quarterback, throwing for about 200 yards and 3 touchdowns. And I told you to sit quarterback C.J. Stroud, and he was the number 18 quarterback, throwing for 230 yards, a touchdown, and 2 picks. So hopefully you took my advice on that. But hopefully you ignored my tight end advice, as I told you to start Cade Otton, and he ended up finishing as the number 20 tight end with only 5 catches. And I told you to sit Sam Laporta, but he had his best week of the season, finishing as the number 2 tight end with 66 yards and a touchdown. So let's take the good, let's get rid of the bad, going into Week 11. And for Week 11, I'll tell you to start running back for the Chiefs, Kareem Hunt. Hunt has been having a career revival playing for the team that drafted him. He's had 21 carries per game since joining the Chiefs this season, and he's facing a weak interior Bills defense. The Bills have been 31st against running backs in fantasy this season, seeing also last week Jonathan Taylor run for 114. And I think I'd like Kareem Hunt to have another big week this week. So start Kareem Hunt. I would also tell you to start running back for the Lions, David Montgomery. After last week with Goff throwing 5 interceptions, I think Campbell is going to want to steady the ship a little bit and kind of get back to pounding the rock. And I think David Montgomery with the 2-headed monster with him and Gibbs, I think it's safe to start both of them this week. But I do like Montgomery, as he's still, I think, their go-to guy. Jacksonville is also terrible against running backs in fantasy, so I'll tell you to start Montgomery. I would also tell you to sit running back Javonte Williams. I think his time as a primary running back, if it was ever in season, is officially out of season. This is more of a committee now, especially with last week. He's not even leading the running back committee in touches anymore. Facing the Falcons, I really just don't like Javonte Williams to start, even if he is the primary. So sit Javonte Williams. And the big sit of the week that will make you gasp aloud and jump in your chair, but you must do it. You have to sit Saquon Barkley this week. And yes, he had a bad week last week versus Dallas. Yes, I know I might get burned, but I'm very confident in this one. He had just a straight up bad week last week against the Cowboys, and he's had a couple stinkers this year, despite having a very great season overall. He's had a couple of weeks that he just completely fell flat, and when he falls flat, he falls very flat. So I think this is going to be more of a shootout against the Commanders. Obviously, Commanders have a great passing game with Jaden Daniels, and so I don't think the Eagles are going to really have the opportunity to pound the rock like they'd like to. So I would really tell you with bass in my voice to sit Saquon Barkley. And from there, we go on to Scott's Parlay of the Week. How did you do last week, and what do you have cooking up for this week?
Oh, so close. Losing off just by the hair of our teeth on a 2-point conversion from Cincinnati. But, indeed, it was a loss. So this week we'll be back at things. And this week we are going to take the Atlanta Falcons at Denver. Atlanta, we got the underdogs, plus 116. So I definitely like them against Denver as an underdog. We also got Kansas City as slight underdogs as well. Whenever you can get Kansas City as an underdog, absolutely you have to take that. I think we have seen that even in the course of the last couple Super Bowls they were in too. And finally, I'm going to take the Baltimore Ravens with Pittsburgh at minus 180 to round things out. So this week, bet on the money line, Atlanta Falcons, Kansas City Chiefs, Baltimore Ravens.
All right, I like those picks. Bet on that, get your money's worth, and cash in with Scott's Parlays. And we thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of the podcast. We also thank you very much for your viewership. Feel free to like, follow, subscribe, and share. And we are looking forward to going into Week 12. This is the point of the year where things are starting to really heat up. The playoff picture is condensing, and we're all going to be, of course, on that playoff machine, trying to predict any way that our favorite team can stay in it or get in it. And join us next week as we recap all the action from this week, make our predictions, give our analysis. We are looking forward to that. And thank you for listening to Mark My Words Football Podcast with Rob.
And Scott.
We are tuning out.